From the News Channel 5 Network, this is SportsLine.
Hey there, SportsLine on your television. Steve Lehman here with you. Glad you are here with us on this Tuesday night on News Channel 5 Plus. Phone lines can be open tonight, 737-7767 if you'd like to get on the program. Last night we talked a lot about what's next for the city of Nashville after really the city did a tremendous job over the weekend of hosting the NHL All-Star Game. We had several people call in and give their thoughts of how well the weekend went off, the things that they experienced throughout the weekend, and pretty much every account that I heard on this show and from anybody else, whether it be through the NHL or visitors in town or people who live in my building that came downtown to check out things, everybody said that the weekend went off without a hitch, that Nashville put on a tremendous show and that the NHL should be absolutely thrilled, which they are, and that what's next, basically. And we talked about that last night, and my thoughts about what is next, and I've said it several times that I think that the city of Nashville needs to at least start the discussion of what that next step is, because the NHL All-Star Game is sort of at the top tier of events that we can host right now when it comes to sports. And there's a couple others out there that could be in the mix, but if you really want to take it to the next level, there are a whole bunch of other options out there, but they all require one thing. They require a state-of-the-art stadium. And that's a discussion that I think the city needs to start happening. Not because Nissan Stadium needs to be renovated tomorrow or you got a plan to build or tear it down and build something new, but none of those things happen overnight. And if Nashville wants to become a player to potentially host a Super Bowl someday, which I think they could do with the right stadium, host a college football playoff game, host a Final Four in basketball, World Cup games potentially in the future, other big things like that. Heck, more concerts. I mean, this is Music City. Think about some of the things. I mean, one of the big events that I remember of the last, year maybe, was the Rolling Stones concert at Nissan Stadium. What was that, early last summer? Something like that? I think you probably get more of those concerts if you can put a roof over that stadium. Right now, it's probably just pretty much a summer gamble anybody would make on one of those stadium tours. But if you have a roof, maybe you expand the dates that you can pull things like that into, the late fall or winter or early spring that right now you wouldn't think is a good gamble if you're a band or promotions or anything like that. There are a lot of things you can do if you take that next step. And again, I think that's something that we all should be in the process of building the discussion on. So we could talk about that again tonight, 737-7767. The Predators, fresh off the All-Star break on the ice, tied at intermission, still scoreless with the St. Louis Blues. They've got to make a run here in the second half. They've got a golden opportunity here. They've won 4 in a row. 10 of their next 15 games are on home ice at Bridgestone Arena. They've got several games coming up against the Central Division where they need to make some hay. So this is a time when they need to turn it on. If this is going to be the team that they expected it to be, that a lot of us expected it to be, it's time that they turn it on right now. Tennessee basketball trying to close out Kentucky right now, which would be a big win for Rick Barnes' team, especially because they were down huge in this game. It was 19, I think, at one point in the first half tonight, and they've battled back and have the lead late after dropping a pair of games last week in which they had the lead in the second half and then lost the game. So a chance to turn the tables a little bit, get a huge win for Rick Barnes and company. A couple other thoughts. The Titans, we could certainly get into that. They were at the Senior Bowl last week. John Robinson, Mike Mularkey down there checking out some players. They're in a lot of film study right now. They're getting set for the NFL Combine, the draft, free agency, all of that stuff. Mularkey has finalized his coaching staff. Everybody's all set and together. They had their first full staff meeting yesterday at St. Thomas Sports Park. I actually got a chance to talk to both John Robinson and Mike Mularkey today. And I'll share this with you. They both come across very impressive when you talk to them in a one-on-one type of setting. They are very thoughtful, and they're to the point in what they want to do. And I think some people maybe miss that, but with their sweeping ideas and generalizations about the hires, certainly the Mike Mularkey thing, a lot of people didn't even want to give him a chance because he was the interim coach and they didn't like the regime before and they didn't like the way the record went. But when you sit down and talk to him, he's a guy that certainly appreciates having the third chance to be the head coach in the NFL. He understands where players are coming from and wants them to be accountable and basically instills systems in that way. He also understands what he has in Marcus Mariota and really knows that he's got to do a job to protect him. He's got to make sure that he stays upright and stays on the field for this team. So you can tell that he's got a plan, and just because he's staying, it's not all going to be the same. I'll also say that Mike Mularkey is pretty funny. Just on a personal basis. That's not going to win any football games. But it's a far cry in dealing with him than dealing with Ken Wisenhunt over the past couple of years. And, again, that's not going to win you any games. But I do think there was a sense last year especially that people were kind of walking on eggshells around St. Thomas Sports Park because of the way Ken Wisenhunt ran the program. Nobody's going to do that with Mike Mularkey as the head coach. That's a staff that likes each other. They like Mularkey. They want to work for him, and they're all working towards its common goal. And again, you got to have the right players. That's not saying that they're going to win just because of that. That's obviously too easy and not the case. But it helps. If you guys can get along, if your players buy in, if they believe in you, and people aren't walking on eggshells around the building, that's a start. And the other thing that I said totally took away from today, and I've said it all along, the more important hire to me wasn't Mike Mularkey staying on as the permanent coach. The more important hire to me was John Robinson, because whoever the head coach was going to be needs more talent. You've got to fill this roster with more guys that could play at other places around the National Football League. And who's going to bring that talent in? It's John Robinson. He's the guy in charge of the 53-man roster. So the fact that they go out and get a guy from the Belichick tree who had experience the last couple of years and did a great job in Tampa and now comes in here, I think that's big. I think the fact that he's from Union City, Tennessee, and in essence kind of grew up a Titans fan, or at least certainly took great interest in them after they moved here to Tennessee because of the location and how close it was to home. He showed that passion when he was introduced a couple weeks ago, showed it again today when talking about his plan and about this team. I think that's important. I think fans want to see guys who truly have the same passion that they do and want to be hurt by the losses in the way they are. And I think John Robinson is that guy. I think he is going to be critical to this team, to bringing in talent. They wanted a scout. They got a really good scout in John Robinson. Now we're going to find out if he can be a really good general manager, and that's important. And the other thing that I thought today that maybe didn't come across in the introductory press conference was just how sharp he is. The format in the press conference, and look, I mean, it was a crowded room and a big day. He just wasn't able to, I guess, deliver the one-liners or give you everything right there up front on day one. Talking to him one-on-one today, you could tell this is a guy who has a clear plan. He's seen this before. He's learned from some of the best, and he knows what he's looking for. He knows what he's going to do, and he definitely has a vision. And he articulated that very well today. So I just walked away very impressed by who he was and how he operates very early on. And again, no games are being played until August, and certainly games that count in September. But you could tell there was a different vibe around St. Thomas Sports Park today, just talking to those guys compared to what we've seen in the past. Your thoughts on those hires, your thoughts on Mike Mularkey, John Robinson, what's next for the Titans, what they need to do now that you've marinated on these hires for the last couple of weeks. 737-7767 is the number. Your thoughts on All-Star Weekend, if you want to get back on that, or what's next for the city of Nashville? What are the events that you would love to see come here now that we've had the All-Star Weekend? As I pointed out last night, several people said it would be great if the All-Star Weekend could just be in Nashville every year. It was that good, and it was. The problem is there's 29 other cities that want to host the NHL All-Star Game as well, and so you got to get back in line, just like you do with the Women's Final Four from a couple years ago and some other things. But there are other events out there, maybe some that we could host based off of the current infrastructure, and maybe some of the bigger ones like I talked about last night, the Super Bowl, the college football playoff, Final Fours on the men's side, if you upgrade the stadium. What's the event that you would love to see here in Nashville the most? What do you think Nashville needs to do in regards to that? Should we be talking about it already? Should we be making plans to either renovate or build anew when it comes to our stadium? Your thoughts on all of those things. 737-7767 is our number tonight. We'll take our first break. We'll come back to get your phone calls and more right after this here on SportsLine.